All right, let's do this. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to Crowdsourcing is Dead. Long live the crowd. Now, crowdsourcing isn't dead, but our hope after today is that the old way of thinking about crowdsourcing will be dead, and then we can celebrate the new view on it. I'm Doug Hansen. I'm the CEO of Topcoder, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar. We're ultimately going to help you learn how to get work done utilizing crowdsourcing. So that's what hopefully we're going to walk away with. A quick housekeeping note, though, if during our time today, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer them live at the end of the webinar. All right, what are you going to learn today? We're gonna go through our own sort of myth busters. We're gonna try to debunk some of the crowdsourcing myths that are out there. We have some experts that are going to help us debunk those. You're going to get an insider's perspective, a customer's perspective. We've got a panel of experts here that are going to give you a view that you may not have known. We're going to teach you how to get work done utilizing a challenge, and ultimately give you the resources to get started. Sound good? All right. Now, how do we want you to feel after today? Well, ultimately, we want you to feel knowledgeable about crowdsourcing. We want you to feel comfortable about crowdsourcing and utilizing crowdsourcing, and ultimately ready to take action and to go out and use crowdsourcing immediately with your business. So let's start by meeting our experts. We've got two experts on the panel today. We got Carl Hemke from Avalara and Mo Morgenstern from Topcoder. Carl, you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Doug. Carl Hemke. I'm the general manager of property tax for Avalara. Avalara bought my business back in October 2021, and been with property tax for, I tried to stop counting, I want to say 30 years now. So I've seen a lot of challenges in that space.
Great. And Mo?
Hi, everyone. I'm William Morgenstern, go by Mo, and I look after operational excellence at Topcoder. But more importantly, my career is about the crowd. It's about open talent and all the opportunity that's there for workers as well as folks like you. So excited to get into today.
Awesome. Great, guys. Well, let's jump in. Hey, Mo, let's level set. You know, you've heard me already say crowdsourcing. You heard me use the word challenges. What exactly is a challenge?
Yeah. So if we think about the way we do most work today, we have something that needs to get done. We find an individual to do it. It gets done and we move on. A challenge is just a slightly different take to that. It says, hey, I've got something to get done. And rather than try to pick the best person to do it, I'm going to open it up to a community. And I'm going to say what success looks like. And I'm going to have that community jump in there and take advantage of the diversity of perspective and talents and speed and all those things to ultimately drive up whatever it is you care about with that work, whether it be speed, accuracy, quality, and so on.
And so ultimately, we see the metal here too. So there's a bit of competition to it ultimately, right?
Yeah, at the core of it, it's a game or a sport, which adds all kinds of really interesting dynamics for the people who are participating. It's not take out the trash or do this one task. Yeah. In the same way that we're used to thinking about it. We create a game, we create engagement, competitiveness, and learning. A lot of great things for those people participating and for the ultimate end product.
And we know competition often drives high quality results at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Great. All right, let's jump in. So we've got our like I said, our form of myth busters. Let's jump into the first one. All right. Question. Industry expertise is essential for challenges to be effective. Carl, you work in a highly specialized field of tax compliance. This is a good one for you. You want to start off this one?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's highly specialized. And so if you think about, in our space, property tax returns, it's getting a lot of information out of ERP systems, extracting it, and then making decisions around that and filing it to many different jurisdictions that all have different rules and requirements. And so it's like, how can you possibly use the crowd for all of that? So, you know, we basically utilize the crowd for a couple ways. One, around developing applications, and you know, next generation applications, that you highly successful applications. And then finally, also doing operational work around some of the activities around property tax compliance. So yeah, we can talk more about that.
Awesome. Mo, what would you add to this, Mo?
Well, I think it's a great example, right? One of the special things about challenges is that you spend a little bit more time getting to the core of what success is. And as Carl mentioned, in property tax, there's very specialized or specific information coming from different systems. But if you really boil that down, it's data extraction, it's data transformation. It's things that don't necessarily require a ton of domain expertise. And the other thing that happens is when you boil it down to like the core or simplified essence of the work that you're trying to get done, it opens opportunity because it allows people with that beginner's mindset or that fresh pair of eyes to come in, understand functionally what you're trying to do, and apply an approach that an insider often wouldn't have even thought of. So it really unlocks a lot of potential there.
Yeah. So actually not having industry expertise is often advantageous to solving a problem potentially.
Absolutely.
Very much so.
All right, let's go to the next one. All right. Crowdsourcing can't ensure quality or innovative outcomes. All right, let's, Carl, why don't we throw this one at you too? I think you have an example you wanted to give.
Yeah, so I mean, we had a big challenge around documents, and so in property tax, it's not where everything is digitized and it's nice transactional related taxation. It is assembling a lot of data, and a part of that data it comes from the assessors and collectors, where they send you a notice or they send you a blank return or they send you a tax bill, and there's 10,000 different assessors and there's 10,000 different collectors. And there's 100,000 different tax jurisdictions, and all of which have different rules and requirements and forms and how they look. And so to think about it, you know, one would say, well, let's just simply use OCR. Well, you can't templatize, 20,000 different documents and assume that you have any kind of efficiency in that process at all. So it needs to be almost templatized on demand. And so we took this problem to the crowd using Topcoder and presented it to them and said, here's our problem, here's what we're trying to achieve. And back from that came an application that is kind of earth-shaking in terms of what it can do. It can take a document that it's never seen before, extract and structure all of that data highly efficiently and upload it into a system. Nobody else in the industry is capable of doing this, and we were able to successfully develop that through Topcoder.
It's a great example. Hey, Mo, I know you've got lots of examples. Anything you'd add here?
I'm kind of ground shaken by Carl's example, to be honest. I mean, it's because it's a great example. You talk about a challenge. Okay, if I know exactly what I want to get done, I'll go ahead and tell the crowd. But what Carl shares is like an even deeper example of like, I know how hairy this problem is. And we can all imagine tackling problems like that as a small team or whatever, and how long and like, how long that discovery and solutioning process would be. But then you can articulate that problem in a challenge itself, like, hey, this is my problem. I've got all kinds of data variability, massive volume, tons of users. First, I need to wrap my head around how do I bring all this under control? And when you articulate that question, again, you get the benefit of hundreds or thousands of experts answering that question, bringing those diverse perspectives just to get you to frame the problem right. And so the benefits and speed and like true cognitive diversity are massive there, as I think Carl's example does a good job of illustrating.
Very much so.
Any other examples you'd give, Mo, on this one? Or
there's loads of examples. I like DNA sequencing, right? We did DNA sequencing some time back where we were using the industry. I think this was the Department of Health and Human Services. They were using a full day with a hardware device to sequence DNA. And basically the net impact, the problem was it was throttling the speed of R&D, because before you could dig into some particular research or project. He had to sequence DNA. It was taking a really long time. And one of our partners hired a data scientist to work on this problem for a year. This person made great improvements. And then knowing sort of what the quality metrics were and knowing that there had been some improvement made, they decided to run a challenge. And in 2 weeks, the challenge generated an even higher, even faster speed, exponentially higher, down to where it was less than 8 minutes. Less than 8 minutes to sequence this DNA after understanding the problem, after working on it in a traditional way for a full year, and then just defining that success criteria and opening it in a challenge. So I'm always partial to data science, and that one's always top of mind.
Yeah, both examples driving real out of the box thinking, right? Within your organization, you have an idea maybe how to solve something, that you put it out to a crowd of individuals, and to your example, Mo, in a very short period of time, to come back with some really great examples, innovative examples that are novel approach to solving something, which actually is great because it leads me to my next question. Let's go on to the next one. Crowdsourcing only works with micro tasks. I think this is going to lead into a nice example. Mo, you want to jump on this one? I know you have a couple examples in mind that you wanted to talk about.
Well, sure. I think the first thing that strikes me about this one is if you boil it down, everything we do is a series of micro tasks. Even massive things like I think we just got a peek of this past year. NASA had a major initiative to discover comets in front of the sun, and from like a optical data science perspective, that's a hard problem, right? They can be hard to see, hard to detect. And so it was just the sort of problem that was well suited for the crowd. And again, by defining that objective, hey, we want to detect any and all comets in this area. Here's the characteristics of it. And putting that out to the community, we and NASA and our community had a lot of fun and a lot of success discovering things that had not been discovered before. I think back to the point of microtask, that's the key. When you use challenges like we've talked about, and there's this concept we use called atomization. It's about taking something that may seem like a big, complicated problem and breaking it down into functional tasks. I wouldn't call them micro tasks, but you can. So I want to build an app. Well, what's the architecture of that app? And creating a challenge for that allows many specialists to come in and give you the best architecture possible. And then feeding that architecture into, what do I want the look and feel, the user experience to look like? And again, reaching out, going wide, getting a lot of diversity and talent to help you flesh through that and iterate through that quickly and bringing those things together. So even the most impressive or complicated problems are solved with a series of tasks. And I guess the secret is there is no secret. We just, challenges give you a way to enhance the speed, the quality, and the diversity of each one of those steps.
So the atomization process, breaking it down into smaller challenges and really allowing those that are skilled in that particular area to work on that work, instead of saying, hey, we have this big thing we need to solve, someone go out there and solve it. You're breaking it down into smaller components that where there's experts of people that are passionate, excited to actually work on that piece of the work. And then you're ultimately bringing it all back together.
Exactly.
I love it. I love the NASA example too, because it's and not just because it helped to discover comets, but it just kind of shows the power of the crowd, right? And I'm going to oversimplify this. So if there's any NASA folks on the call here, NASA comes to us. Think about this as any company coming to us. NASA comes to us and says, hey, we have this data, these images of the sky from the LASCO telescope, and we want to see if your community can help us discover any previously undetected comets in. Is this something they can help with? Again, very oversimplifying this, but like the answer is always yes, right? I mean, this community, the skill sets and the brilliance of this community around the world, they can solve anything. And so then we worked with NASA, we put a challenge out, and, within 30 days, we had some very novel approaches. These are things that, for some that NASA engineers wouldn't come up with, right? And think about that within your own company, right? When utilizing a challenge type model, these are individuals in your own company. They have a very certain way, often ways to approach things, or how they're thinking about it. They have that industry expertise. All of a sudden, you have individuals from all around the world coming in to solve something. And the beauty of the NASA one I like too is some of the top winners where they didn't have any background in this industry, right? They just used some very novel approaches to solving a problem that this company needed to innovate on. And so I love this example because of that, because it shows the power of the community. Carl, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on this one, or.
No, I think you summed it up well, and I think that what the application that we talked about versus even this high technology, high science one, it really describes that you can use it for any problem, right? Whether it's a day-to-day problem that we're having in property tax, or it's a very complex scientific problem that you're seeing. So it can be fit and created, but I think also the automatization of tasks and how to reassemble those tasks is also the next part of it, right? So you can atomize it and to isolate specifically how to get the work done, and then reassemble it back to where it's effectively a program that works collectively of all that great talent that developed it.
Love it. All right, let's go to.
I think it touches. I think it touches, Doug, on one of the first goals that you mentioned, like knowledgeable. We want you folks in the audience to be knowledgeable at the end of this, and I think the key takeaway is not necessarily like that our community is smarter than your employees, or it's not anything like that. It's just the recognition of the fact that statistically, measurably, the more people, the more minds that you can apply to a specific problem, the greater the likelihood of success, the higher the average quality, the greater the likelihood of coming up with a truly innovative or exponential value type solutions. And that's just math, right? That's just the mechanics of this type of work methodology. And it's not just our community, it's not just Topcoder, it's not just NASA, it's a methodology. And I think that's one thing that would be important for folks here to take away from this discussion, if they haven't worked with Crowd, or if they're new to that concept of challenges.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out, Mo. And I like to oversimplify it in the sense that, if you were to sit at your dinner table and ask your family, how to solve something, you may get a great result or a great idea. And then take that same question, walk into like a supermarket and ask everybody there, right? And see what they come back with. Now walk into a stadium and ask everybody there how to solve it. You bet you're going to get some really novel approaches, some great examples, things that the smaller group may not have thought of. There will be times that small group did come up with the best idea, but to your point, it's statistics, right? I mean, if you open it up to a wider audience with a broader skill set and knowledge, I mean, there's a good chance they've got the experience, the expertise, the knowledge to solve what you're trying to solve ultimately. So. Good call out though, Mo. That is an important piece of knowledge we want to make sure everybody walks away with today. All right, let's jump on to, crowdsourcing is only for large companies. All right, Carl, I know you've got a couple examples here. I know you started off, you've been involved with crowdsourcing for some time, from small companies to larger companies. You want to give us an example here?
Yeah, so I began to dabble with the Crowd in working with a larger company in developing software and developing kind of practical applications for it. And then shortly thereafter, I found an opportunity to start up my own company. And so back in 2014, I created the company CrowdReason. And the first call I made was essentially to reach out to figure out how I could utilize the Crowd in order to develop the application I wanted to develop, as well as utilize the Crowd for operational tasks. And that particular project ultimately created success, where I was able to sell the company that I founded to a large company. And now part of that large company, we're using crowdsourcing for various aspects. And so both small, both large, it can fit any size company.
Carl, what inspired you there? Why did you seem to be a pioneer in the crowdsourcing space? What was the inspiration there?
I think I was thinking about the crowd before it was called the crowd. I didn't know what to call it back in the 1998 timeframe, I think it was. But it was thinking about the internet, thinking about the ability to reach out to millions of people easily through a digitization of communication. And so what can you do with that? How can you assemble that information together that ultimately can create value? And that's really got me started in this space and really continuing to research on how could you do it. And then finally, companies emerged that created platforms to allow for me to reach out to individuals and do that in a highly scripted way where I can efficiently utilize talent around the world.
Carl was crowdsourcing before crowdsourcing was cool. You're the pioneer, the godfather of crowdsourcing. I love it. Mo, any good examples that you have, or any example you want to give here around like smaller companies?
Yeah, I'm always biased to like the Cinderella stories or the feel-good stories, and one in particular comes to mind. There was called him Dr. Dan, very passionate sleep medicine doctor, and if you're not familiar with sleep apnea and sleep medicine, it often involves going into a clinic and staying overnight so that you can be observed and measured and all those things while you sleep. It happens. Well, Dr. Dan had a vision for allowing that to be done at home, right? To take out one of the biggest pain points in the diagnosis of sleep apnea. And he started, as many young entrepreneurs do, and he worked with a couple of individual agencies, hire a person to do this, hire a person to do that. And he ran into some of the problems that we all run into sometimes. Maybe quality's not there, or somebody has an issue come up and they have to bow out of a project. Those kind of normal things that we all deal with when managing teams. And at some point, he decided to come to Topcoder. And what we were able to do through the crowd and through challenges was to take Dr. Dan from concept to a launched application in the Apple iOS store within 4 months, going through all the tasks that lead up to something, an accomplishment like that, the design, the experience, the steps, the tech stack, the launching and approval of your app into the App Store. And it was really special to be a part of that, because not just because of Dr. Dan, but because of the sort of new capability that he was providing to something that impacts a lot of real people. Sleep apnea is not the rarest condition out there, and this really was a needle mover in terms of what that experience looks like for people to get help.
Mo, can you talk a little bit about, I guess this is a great example, a little bit about the process there? So you had a founder come to you, he had a vision, what he ultimately wanted to achieve, and was inspired by utilizing a crowd apparently. And what was sort of the process you went through?
So that process started by discovery, essentially. What work have you gotten done so far? I believe we had like a design thinking session that accompanied some of our early design challenges. So before we go out and design pretty screens for the app, like let's really understand what's the experience that you're trying to create, and what are the steps involved. And now, like, what are the things that are most important to you, and allowing that to open up opportunity for everything else in turn. And so we started with the series of design challenges, all of which gave a lot of diverse, different takes on that user experience. Then again, getting into like the nuts and bolts of that application. Okay, so it's in the medical space, HIPAA compliance, compatibility with electronic health records. So kind of stepping through those things as part of our atomization and challenge definition process, but being able to do it quickly, right? Because well-defined requirements and a good roadmap might take a little bit of extra time up front, but it enabled us to move very quickly through the execution phase, because you can run things in parallel. You have nearly infinite bandwidth and work capacity for execution once you have those things framed up. Does that help?
Yeah, no, it does. This is good. I mean, I think ultimately companies that have been doing crowdsourcing for some time have processes, and you summed it up well here. I think it's we've simplified the process over the years, and the founder needs to know, what do they ultimately want to accomplish, what have they done so far, what are some of the requirements, and then going back to, you talked about the atomization, and you have multiple steps in the process, and I mean 4 months, right, from concept to a go live production. I mean, it's pretty amazing what can be done utilizing a crowd of individuals. Speed and quality are things to take away, guys, from a knowledge perspective. All right, let's keep going. I want to keep an eye on time here. All right, crowdsource. This is a good one, guys. This is one that we often get from customers. Crowdsourcing won't work for sensitive or high security projects. Mo, why don't we start with you on this one, and then Carl, I definitely want to hear from you after Mo gives his insight.
Yeah, I got to keep myself honest here because this is such a topic. So I'll hit some of the highlights. The atomization process, we already talked about it in terms of quality, specificity, all those benefits. Another aspect that comes by design of the atomization process is that the people contributing to your project are contributing to small pieces of that project, which inherently puts a layer of obfuscation or anonymity into the project itself. Another important aspect is you can have highly sensitive projects that don't require exposing or handling highly sensitive data. Since it's top of mind, we talk about the healthcare space. Our crowd has done incredible work around digital and electronic health records without ever needing to handle health records, without ever needing to handle that information, because the atomization or the definition process gets to the core of what do you need? Well, I need something that will process this type of data or generate this type of data or send this type of data on this particular journey. And a lot of times that's the thing you're looking for, and it doesn't require handling or exposure of that data. So I guess last point, to try and keep it brief, we've worked with everyone from SOCOM, United States Special Operations Command, to DARPA, of course, NASA, and the National Maritime Intelligence Agency. So this is a well-worn path, and as try as I might, I can't fully do it justice here, but the takeaway is that crowdsourcing has been used to great effect to solve some of the hardest problems in some of the most sensitive industries in the world.
Yeah, Mo, I want to spend a little bit of extra time on this one, because I do think this is again a question that often comes up. You talked about the atomization and obfuscation of data. Oftentimes members in the community don't even know what they're working on. Right. I mean, because we oftentimes use metaphors as well. And so you may be working on a top secret project or a highly classified project, and they don't even know that they're working on that. All they know is they have certain requirements. They have a certain data structure, and they do their one piece of that, right, in that atomization process. And then when it's all brought back together on the client side, it's a complete project that meets all the requirements for the business. So I don't want to underscore how we figured out how to ensure that customers' IP is protected, that their security, they don't have to worry about security. Because to your point, we've worked in other companies have done the same. They worked in financial services, healthcare, right? These are all highly regulated, tax. I mean, the highly regulated industries, and we've worked with some companies on some pretty significant innovation that would be considered top-notch IP for their organizations, and we did that all utilizing a crowd. And so, Mo, if you want to dive any deeper, I mean, I guess now's the time to do it if you wanted to give an example, because I think this is really one that I want to leave people with feeling comfortable, because oftentimes this is where people get really nervous about using a crowd.
Yeah, this is a situation. It'd be helpful to have an example to deep dive.
Why don't we start with Carl? Why don't you give me your example, and then Mo, think about maybe try to think about maybe an example you might want to highlight for the crowd.
And I think that the atomization, as we talked about, atomization was helpful in identifying experts for a particular issue, right? it's not only helpful for that, but it's also helpful in the security side. So where you can narrow it down to, as I think about it, you step back and say, what are we concerned about, right? We're concerned about our IP. Well, what of the IP are you concerned about? So you keep drilling down into, and you can draw a ring around essentially part of the application that you're not concerned about, because it's generic enough to be utilized in any space, but then it's bringing it all back together. And so atomization is the core of crowdsourcing, and quite frankly, it's why it works so well, because you're able to find the right talent, isolate the problem set into a definable problem, and then bring it all back together again. But we utilize that process in developing our applications, whether it's developing an algorithm for the machine learning part of the application, whether it's developing an algorithm to or developing the workflow of how all of it gets pieced back together in terms of some of the operational aspects of it. But we, probably the number of experts that we used were 20 plus experts in various other areas to then ultimately assemble that back. And yes, you're right. Nobody did know what they were working on and why, essentially. You don't need to necessarily tell the whole scope of work for a project. It's really all about the script or the scope of work for that individual task.
Carl, how did you, you had to come to a certain comfort level to ultimately utilize the crowd for some of this work. How did you get to that point?
By essentially answering the question, what are we not comfortable with, or what are we worried about? And so by isolating it down to these smaller areas, it removed the worry about it, especially if they're then done by different groups, different people around the world. So I think anything can be broken down into areas of where you're not worried about security or releasing IP.
Yeah, it's I think we've been doing this long enough, and so we've been doing this for 20 years. So we've been along the way, we found Carl along the way, but we've been doing this for a long time, guys. And security has always been the top concern from every customer. And so we have really strong processes to ensure that IP is protected and security is the utmost priority for the work that we do. So I don't underestimate the atomization process and breaking it into very small components and having individuals work on one component, each individual working on different components and then bringing it back together. That is security in itself. And you breaking your IP down into very small little components and bring it back together to the final product for the organization. Mo, I guess we're kind of now. As I chatted for a little bit, I know we're kind of running on time here. Any last thoughts you'd want to add on this one?
Sure. I've got 2 or 3 examples. I'll start with one, and you call time when it's appropriate. Yeah. I guess one of the best examples I can think of is we have a long time customer in the healthcare industry, a health insurance provider, and they've long been believers in challenges. And soon enough, we came to the milestone of how do we scale this, knowing that we're in a highly sensitive, highly regulated environment. And we want to just take friction out of that process, ensure it's secure all the time. And that was really interesting milestone with that customer because they were so advanced and so big in their thinking and understanding of this capability. So we plugged into their CI/CD. We plugged into their development pipeline, the way that their teams internally would define, shape, assign, prioritize, and execute work. And the way that we were able to do that was just a merging of the processes and putting in a data leakage protection aspect and integration to our platform that said, hey, whenever you have work that drops on the to-do list, we'll look at that work, we'll ensure that it's secure, we'll let you know if it's not, and we'll pull that work out and assign it to the community and then send it back in, giving you the visibility and the sort of security and quality checks along the way that really tie that into the way that you work every day. Because a lot of times folks think about, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to do a challenge. Oh man, that was awesome. But then eventually you get to that point of well, how do I just make this a normal part of working, especially if you're in a large enterprise or regulated industry. So we did some really cool stuff there.
Awesome. That's a great example. Thanks, Mo. All right, let's go on to the next question. I think this might be our last one too. Crowdsourcing doesn't attract top talent. Let's see, Carl, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, so we've got a great experience on this. And so, you know, if you think about your traditional ways of sourcing a project, either you're looking around the room and you're saying, who's going to do this, right? And if it's a smaller room, doesn't take very long to figure out who's there. Or you go out and you get outside help. And then the question is okay, let's, you know, have a beauty contest. Let's figure out who's the right consulting firm to do this. And you make your best guess that that's the right consulting firm to get it done. And that may or may not be the answer. But whereas in crowdsourcing, it's not a beauty contest initially in terms of big groups of people. You're able to put it out to the crowd, then have a challenge. You get to test essentially the capabilities of the individuals, and then whoever ultimately provides you with the exact piece of what you're looking for wins the contest. And that's not just you're putting all your eggs in one basket. As we talked about the atomization process, where now we've broken it up into many different areas that we need to develop. Now we can get the best of every single piece of those aspects of a project. And so we were able to do that. As I'm thinking back to our document management application, where we were able to find just this absolutely talented architect, absolutely talented developer, front-end developer and back-end developer. And lo and behold, they won Topcoder over the year that year in 2014 after we developed the application. So we were able to find absolutely the best people in the world utilizing this approach.
That's awesome. Hey, and I may be biased here. In our mission at our purpose statement at Topcoder is to unlock the potential of the global workforce. And you know, one of the reasons why we're driven at Topcoder is there's a lot of talented people out there in this world that just haven't had a chance to show that potential. And this challenge model allows them to rise up, right? Maybe they don't have that education or that background, or maybe they don't have the resume, but they're very knowledgeable and skilled in an area. And there's no biases in this model, right? You put a challenge out there with the requirements, and anyone in the community can step up and show that they're skilled in order to solve that problem. And that's the beauty of this model. Anybody can rise up to the top, and so there's no biases, and so that's what gets me excited about this model every day, and what it can do, and when you think about what it can do for organizations all over the world. Mo, I know you got a couple great examples here. You want to share them?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to this that really shine through for me. The first is, at some point, we have to be honest with ourselves that we're not very good at identifying the best talent. There's loads of research on this, research that tells us that the best predictor of actual talent or performance is a sample of work. And that has a correlation of about 29%. The second and third best, cognitive ability test and structured interviews. And it just goes down from there. So we're talking about 29% at what? At actually doing the work, which is at the root of a challenge. A challenge says, I know I can't pick. I'll be wrong. Here's the work. All of you come in and do it. And then what do you see? Time and time again, you see, oh, that's a surprise. A police officer in Brazil just came up with the best data science algorithm for detecting illegal fishing with 2 sets of data, which goes to the second point, which is, even if you had infinite budget and you could tell who the best talent was, it's hard to get that talent. They're already working somewhere else. And we already said we have infinite money. So forget the money part. They're working somewhere else. They're not available. They live somewhere else. Topcoder or crowds, right? This space that we have for open talent draws people who are there for all kinds of reasons. Earning is just one. A lot of people are attracted to really hard problems. And so this mechanism also gives you access to just talent that you're not going to find. And if you're trying to hire somebody, or if you're trying to engage in the same ways, right? It opens up a new pond, so to speak, to fish in with talent who's engaging in different ways and working in different ways.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, in the direction that we're seeing now, a lot of the workforce is shifting toward freelancing. So some of the best talent, to Mo's point, and one, we didn't even realize that they were out there. Now we know some of the best is actually shifting to a freelance world because they want to work on things they're passionate about, things they're excited to work on every day. And those are the people that you want. So when you break that atomization down and there's that different components, that there's somebody that's excited to work on that piece of work, right? Think about that in your organization. You have an individual, you give them a bunch of things they need to do. There's things they're going to be excited about and they're going to be knowledgeable about, but there's other things they don't want to do. That other thing that they don't want to do, there's someone out there that wants to do that and is excited to do that. And that's the beauty of the model. Great example, Mo. I appreciate it. All right, guys, I think we're coming down to our closing here. We're nearing the end of our time. So let's wrap up with a few insights. Carl, you want to share with our listeners just some lessons, things that you've learned from running challenges and using Crowd over the years?
As I think about it, the first thing is that what is the reach to the crowd, the active crowd that's out there? How big is that reach? How big can you reach out to global? How many countries are they in? Do they speak the right language, and are they capable of doing the work? And so what does that reach to? What is the process of how you ultimately go through each one of these contests? Is that a well-made process? And then 3, it's really the scripting of what you're trying to do, and what is that scope of work for that atomized task that you're referring to. So if you have a good reach of a crowd, you have a good process, and you can script well, and then make sure that you're also, the final is validation of the work, making sure that it's validated. Those are the 4 keys to success, clearly. And we've gone through that, and we've really learned that those are essentially things that create success in our projects.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. And I hope some of our attendees, or I hope all of our attendees are inspired by the work you've done with Avalara and some of your other companies over the year utilizing crowdsourcing. Before we wrap, I want to ask Mo to share any final thoughts, Mo, on how to run a successful challenge.
Yeah, and I didn't quite see Carl's answer, but I'm glad to say that there'll be some similar themes between what makes a good challenge and what makes good success generally.
There we go.
First is the right partner. So I know we've talked a lot about a specific firsthand examples, but again, the knowledge piece is helping those of you who may be new to crowdsourcing or new to the notion of challenges to understand that there's a whole ecosystem out there for this. And finding the right partner, similar to a lot of what Carl shared, is an important point. You have partners like Topcoder who are very skilled and focused on digital work, solving digital problems in the wild, meaning sitting in your database right now, all messy and dirty and needing to be not just solved, but actually usable in a business context. Topcoder focuses on that in the digital space. You have other folks like HeroX who have really good strengths in building a crowd to solve whatever problem it is you want to focus on, for example. And you have folks like Kaggle, right, who focus on well-structured data science algorithms. Right. So understand that there's partners in the space and they can all help guide you and make that experience easier, depending on what it is you're looking for. The second is defining success. We've talked about atomization. Carl has made similar points, so I won't belabor it anymore. But I like this quote from Einstein, which says, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solutions. Because the reality is challenges, especially, they make the solving part easy. They really do. It's magic. But what enables that magic is, specifying it, asking the right question and aiming that solving power in the right direction. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, so to speak. And then make it meaningful, especially if you're in an organization and you're all fired up about challenges. If you aim a challenge at something that you could just as easily or quickly or for the same cost do a bunch of different ways, it's probably not going to take you where you want to go ultimately in terms of how how challenges and how crowd can be part of your toolbox going forward, how it can be part of the way you think about getting work done in general, because that requires doing things that are meaningful, that'll give you the opportunity to be impressed. And any challenge that you run should give you the opportunity to be impressed. Again, if it's no different than if you could solve it a million different ways, solve it one of those other ways, right? If you're going to use a challenge, then make sure you leave that opportunity to be impressed.
Great. Thanks, Mo. Hey, great insight from our experts today. Thank you. And, our hope is that everybody listening has a better understanding of how powerful challenges can be for getting work done, but most importantly, driving innovation and achieving measurable results for their organization. So I want to thank Carl and Mo for their time today. Hopefully their stories have inspired you guys. This not to overuse this phrase, but this is the future of work. We're tapping into the minds of the most brilliant people around the world. This is open innovation at its finest. I'm confident that this model can help every organization. This isn't just a pitch for Topcoder, guys. If all companies start utilizing crowdsourcing, can you imagine the innovation and the progress we'll make within, in the world, ultimately, whether it's just business or solving different organizational government needs, university needs, anything, guys. This is open innovation again at its finest. Let this model can help you discover your comments. So if you guys have any questions or curious to learn more about challenges, we've got our contact information up here. Please reach out, and we'd love to help give you some guidance. I think we still do have some time for some questions, guys. Should we open up the questions? Anything come in? Let's see. Let's see the Q&A. Any questions? No. Give it one more minute. First question. I think it was pretty comprehensive, I guess. Everybody's so hopefully everybody's feeling comfortable. They're understanding where we're at and going back to you're knowledgeable, you're comfortable and ready to take action. All right, guys. I don't see any questions, so we're going to end it here. Again, reach out to us if you want to learn more. Otherwise, have a great week. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.